The Galactic Council chamber hummed with the low-frequency vibrations of 100 different species murmuring in their native tongues. The air shimmered with holographic displays, each projecting the insignias of the 30 most powerful civilizations in known space. At the center of the floating ring of anti-grav thrones stood Captain Ryan Blake, his human frame dwarfed by the towering forms of the Vorak and the elegant bioluminescent Superians. His uniform, crisp black and silver of the United Earth Stellar Navy, stood out starkly against the ornate armor and flowing robes of the assembled dignitaries. High Prelate Vexis of the Superians rose from her throne, her slender form glowing faintly with shifting hues of blue and violet. Her voice, amplified by the chamber's acoustics, carried effortlessly. The matter before this council is the inclusion of the human species in the great trials. As per tradition, only those deemed worthy by unanimous vote may participate. A ripple of amusement passed through the gathered representatives. Ambassador Krell of the Vorak clattered his armored mandibles together, the sound like grinding metal. Worthy, he sneered, his massive carapace shifting as he leaned forward. The humans are infants in the galactic arena. Their ships are fragile, their soldiers are slow. What could they possibly contribute to the trials? Blake kept his expression neutral, though his fingers tightened slightly around the datapad in his hand. He had expected this. The Vorak had been vocal in their disdain for humanity since first contact. Their idea of diplomacy was a show of force, and they had yet to see anything from Earth worth respecting. Captain Blake, Vexis said, her tone diplomatic but edged with something colder. The Council has reviewed your petition. However, the concerns raised by the Vorak and others cannot be ignored. The great trials are not merely a test of strength, but of strategy, endurance, and the ability to adapt. Many here question whether your species is prepared. Blake allowed himself a small smile. With all due respect, High Prelate, I think the Council is making a mistake. Krell barked a laugh, the sound echoing harshly in the chamber. A mistake, your arrogance is amusing. Human, the trials have existed for millennia. They separate the true powers of the galaxy from the pretenders. You are not ready. Blake didn't flinch. And yet, Ambassador, humanity has faced worse odds before. We didn't survive Earth's wars by being weak. A murmur ran through the chamber. The other representatives exchanged glances. The Tarkilians, their four eyes blinking in unison, leaned in with interest. The crystalline Sidonians pulsed faintly, their bodies reflecting the dim light as they processed the exchange. Vexis raised a slender hand, silencing the murmurs. The Council will now vote. One by one, the representatives cast their ballots. The holographic display above the chamber flickered as each species registered their decision. Blake watched, his pulse steady. He already knew the outcome. The final tally flashed across the display. Unanimous. Krell's mandibles spread in what passed for a grin among the Vorak. The decision is clear. Humanity is excluded from the great trials. Perhaps in another century, when you've proven you can keep up. Blake didn't react immediately. He took a slow breath, then tapped a command into his datapad. The holographic display shifted, pulling up a star map. A single system, Sigma Draconis, flashed red. Interesting, Blake said, his voice calm, because I was just about to propose a demonstration. The chamber fell silent. Vexis tilted her head, her bioluminescence flickering with curiosity. A demonstration, Blake nodded. One human fleet against 3 Vorak battle groups, right here, in Sigma Draconis. If we lose, humanity withdraws from galactic affairs for the next 100 years. No petitions, no appeals. Krell's laughter was sharp. You're bluffing. Blake met his gaze. Try me. The chamber erupted into murmurs. The Sidonians pulsed rapidly, their crystalline forms vibrating with excitement. The Tarkilians hissed among themselves. Even Vexis seemed taken aback. You can't be serious, Krell growled. You would throw away your species' future on a single battle. Blake's smile didn't waver. We've done it before. For the first time, Krell hesitated. The human's confidence was unsettling. Vexis studied Blake for a long moment, then turned to Krell. The offer is bold, and according to council law, any species may issue a challenge of worthiness. The Vorak have the right to refuse. Of course. Krell's carapace flexed in irritation. Refuse. We are the Vorak. We do not back down from challenges, especially not from humans. He slammed a clawed fist against his throne. Very well, Captain. You will have your demonstration. And when your fleet is reduced to scrap, remember, you brought this upon yourselves. Blake inclined his head, looking forward to it. As he turned to leave, the chamber buzzed with renewed chatter. The other representatives watched him go, some with pity, others with curiosity. None of them believed humanity stood a chance. Blake didn't need them to. He stepped onto the transport platform, the anti-grav fields humming beneath his feet. Behind him, the council's voices faded into the distance. They'd learn soon enough. The bridge of the USN Defiance hummed with quiet efficiency, its smooth white panels and holographic displays, a stark contrast to the gilded war chambers of the Vorak. Admiral Lisa Hayes stood at the tactical table, her fingers dancing across the projected star map. The image of Sigma Draconis pulsed red at the center, its 3 gas giants and asteroid belts highlighted in tactical gold. Across from her, Fleet Master Gore loomed, his armored carapace scraping against the ceiling. His 4 eyes glowed with amusement as he examined the human vessel. You bring us to this toy of a ship to discuss terms. His voice rumbled like grinding stone. The Vorak War Council meets in halls large enough to dock cruisers. Hayes didn't look up. We prefer functionality over posturing. She tapped a command, and the star map zoomed in. Sigma Draconis, neutral system. No strategic value, perfect for a demonstration. Gora's mandibles twitched. Demonstration of what? Your fragility. Behind him, his retinue of Vorak officers clattered their armored limbs in laughter. Hayes finally met his gaze. A wager, 1 human fleet against 3 of your battle groups. Standard engagement rules. No planet crackers, no bioweapons, pure tactics. The laughter died. Gore leaned forward, his massive claws denting the edge of the table. You are serious, deadly. Hayes crossed her arms. If we lose, humanity withdraws from galactic affairs. No more petitions, no more requests for inclusion in the great trials. We fade into the void. Gora's eyes narrowed. And if you win, Hayes smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. We claim the title of apex species, full recognition. No more mockery in your council chambers. The Vorak officers erupted in disbelief. One of them, a younger commander with scarred plating, slammed a fist into the wall. Absurd. The trials are for warriors, not softkin. Gora raised a claw for silence. His gaze never left Hayes. You would stake your species' future on one battle. Hayes didn't blink. We don't need a second chance. For a long moment, the only sound was the quiet hum of the Defiance's engines. Then Gore straightened, his carapace clicking in amusement. Very well, but we will not hold back, human. 3 battle groups, full armaments. The Vorak do not play at war. Hayes nodded. Neither do we. She tapped her wristcom. Captain Blake, send the coordinates to Fleet Master Gore. A hologram of Blake flickered to life beside her. His smirk was razor sharp. Transmitting now. Try to keep up. Gora's eyes flared crimson, but he said nothing as the data streamed to his implants. His officers clustered around him, their armored forms bristling. One of them, a sensor specialist with jagged crests along his spine, hissed. This is a trick. They cannot hope to match us in open battle. Hayes watched them, her expression unreadable. You've always measured strength in armor and firepower. But war isn't about who hits hardest. It is about who outthinks the other. Gora snorted, a sound like grinding metal. We shall see. He turned to leave, his retinue following. At the door, he paused. One final condition, Admiral. No retreat, no surrender. The battle ends when one side is annihilated. Hayes didn't flinch, agreed. The Vorak left, their heavy footsteps fading down the corridor. Blake's hologram flickered out, leaving Hayes alone with her officers. The tactical map still glowed between them, Sigma Draconis spinning silently. Her XO Commander Reyes exhaled sharply. Admiral, 3 battle groups, even with our stealth systems. Those odds are exactly what they expect. Hayes zoomed in on the gas giants, and that is why they'll lose. The bridge crew exchanged glances. Reyes swallowed. What is the play? Hayes's fingers danced across the console again. The star map shifted, highlighting the magnetic fields of the gas giants, the density of the asteroid belts. Gar thinks this is about brute force. But we're not fighting his ships, she smiled. We're fighting his pride. Outside the viewports, the first of the human fleet stealth corvettes shimmered into view, their hulls reflecting the distant stars. They moved in perfect silence, sliding into formation around the Defiance. Hayes watched them, her voice quiet but firm. Send the order to all ships. Operation Apex is live. Reyes nodded, his hands flying across his console. Across the fleet, 100 captains received the same message. 100 engines fled to life, and humanity made ready to prove its worth. The warp rupture tore through the fabric of space like a dying star's last scream. One by one, the Vorak battle group emerged, jagged, spiked monstrosities of blackened alloy, their hulls scarred from 1,000 conquests. The dreadnought Imperator led the swarm, its forward cannons already glowing with charged plasma. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USN Atlantica, his fingers tightening around the command rail. The tactical display flickered red, 10 Vorak warships for every human vessel. Status, he said, voice calm. Lieutenant Chen's hands danced across her console. All ships report ready, Commander. Railguns charged, stealth systems primed. Morrison nodded. The plan was simple. Make them overconfident. A harsh, grating voice crackled over the comms. Battlelord Thark's image filled the view screen. His chitinous face split in a sneer. Human, he spat, mandibles clicking. Your fleet is a joke. Run now, or die where you stand. Morrison smirked. Funny. I was about to say the same to you. Tharks leaned closer, his multi-faceted eyes gleaming. You have one chance, surrender. Kneel before the Vorak Dominion, and we may let your species live as servants. Morrison didn't blink. Counteroffer. You surrender right now. Silence. Then Thark snarled. Destroy them. The Vorak fleet opened fire. Plasma lances streaked across the void, searing toward the human ships. Evasive pattern, Delta. Morrison barked. The Atlantica banked hard, twisting between the blasts. Across the formation, human ships scattered, not in panic, but precision. Stealth systems online, Chen reported. Morrison watched the Vorak sensors flicker, their targeting systems scrambling. Now, the Atlantica vanished. 1 second it was there. The next gone. No heat trail, just empty space where a warship had been. On the Imperator's bridge, Sensor Officer Vriss hissed in confusion. Lord Tharks, the human flagship, it's gone. Tharks slammed a clawed fist into his throne. Impossible, find it. Vriss claws skittered across his console. Scans show nothing. Their stealth tech, it's beyond anything we've seen. A new voice cut through the chaos, Admiral Hayes, broadcasting from the Defiance. Vorak fleet, you've made a critical mistake. Thark's world. Where is that coming from? His voice was ice. You assumed we'd fight fair. Then the Defiance fired. Not at the Vorak ships, at the gas giant behind them. The railgun round struck the planet's upper atmosphere, triggering a chain reaction. Magnetic storms erupted, swirling into a colossal vortex. Lightning arced across the void, straight into the Vorak formation. Shields buckled, systems overloaded, and in that moment of chaos, the human fleet struck. The Atlantica reappeared, point-blank range to the Imperator's starboard flank. Fire, Morrison said. The railgun round punched through the dreadnought's shields like paper. The reactor core imploded a second later, swallowing the Imperator in a silent, fiery bloom. Thark's last transmission was a scream of rage. Cut short by the void, Morrison exhaled. One down, the real fight was just beginning. The Vorak fleet surged forward, their jagged warships blotting out the stars. Battle Lord Thark's voice crackled across the comms, thick with amusement. Your little tricks won't save you, human. We see your ships dancing like frightened insects. Captain Blake watched the tactical display as the Defiant skimmed the upper atmosphere of Sigma Draconis' gas giant. Lightning flickered beneath them, painting the bridge in flashes of blue. Adjust course starboard 15 degrees, he ordered. Keep us in the magnetic turbulence. On the view screen, the lead Vorak dreadnought, Claw of Dominance, barreled toward them, its plasma cannons glowing hot. Sensor Officer Vriss aboard the Vorak ship snarled as his screens flickered. The humans are using the gas giant's interference. Their signatures keep. His voice cut off as another energy surge scrambled the feed. Blake's comms officer grinned. They're blind in there, sir? Not for long, Blake said. Helm, take us deeper into the storm belt. Let's give them a real show. The Defiance banked sharply, diving into the swirling violet clouds. Behind them, the Vorak fleet followed, their commanders too confident to consider caution. Thark's laughter echoed through the comms. Running to your death, human, how poetic. Inside the gas giant's violent storms, visibility dropped to 0. The Defiance's hull groaned under the pressure, but Blake held course. Railgun status. Charged and ready, Captain. The weapons officer reported, but we've got one shot before the storm fries our systems. Blake nodded. Make it count. Aboard the Claw of Dominance, Vriss slammed a clawed fist against his console. Where did they go? Scans are useless in this interference, Battle Lord Tharks growled. It doesn't matter. Their pitiful weapons can't penetrate our shields. Full speed ahead, crush them. The Vorak dreadnought surged forward, its massive bulk tearing through the storm. Then, for a single perfect moment, the clouds parted, and the Defiance appeared directly in front of them, railgun humming. Blake didn't hesitate. Fire. The railgun round streaked through the storm, a hypersonic spear of tungsten. It punched through the Claw of Dominance's forward shields like paper and buried itself deep in the reactor core. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the dreadnought's hull bulged and imploded in a silent, catastrophic burst of light. The shockwave rippled outward, destabilizing the nearby Vorak ships. On the Defiance's bridge, the crew erupted in cheers. Blake allowed himself a small smile. One down. But the battle wasn't over. The remaining Vorak ships, though shaken, regrouped quickly. Tharks' voice roared across the comms, no longer amused. You'll pay for that, human. Blake glanced at his tactical officer, time to execute Phase 2, signal the Atlantica. Hidden in the storm's chaos, Commander Morrison's stealth cruiser received the transmission. About time, he muttered, then turned to his crew. Deploy the drones. Let's give our guests a proper welcome. Hundreds of unmanned fighters launched from the Atlantica, their small signatures lost in the gas giant's interference. They swarmed the Vorak fleet like angry hornets, their kamikaze runs overloading enemy point defense systems in bursts of sacrificial fire. Aboard the Vorak command ship, Thark snarled as another explosion rocked his vessel. What is this? Insects throwing themselves at us. His tactical officer paled. They're not trying to destroy us, my lord. They're herding us. Tharks whirled to the main display, just in time to see the human fleet break formation and accelerate toward the asteroid field at the system's edge. After them, Tharks bellowed. Leave none alive. The Vorak gave chase, their rage blinding them to the trap. As the human ships weaved through the asteroids, the Vorak followed, their superior armor shrugging off collisions. Then the asteroids exploded. Pre-planted charges detonated in sequence, turning the field into a deadly minefield. Vorak ships caught in the blast spun out of control, their hulls cracking under the force. On the Defiance, Blake watched the carnage unfold. Admiral Hayes wasn't kidding about the fireworks, he murmured, His comms officer looked up. Sir, the Atlantica reports all charges detonated. Vorak fleet cohesion is at 40% and dropping. Blake exhaled. Then let's finish this. All ships converge on the Imperator. The human fleet turned as one, their weapons locking onto Tharx's crippled flagship. The Vorak warlord stared at his failing systems, his arrogance finally giving way to disbelief. How? He whispered. Blake's voice cut through the silence on the comms. You called us weak, Tharx. But weakness isn't about strength. It is about adaptability. Then the Defiance opened fire. The Vorak fleet reeled from the devastating railgun strike, their formation breaking apart like shards of glass. Battlelord Tharx snarled as his command throne vibrated from the impact alarms. Regroup, Titan formation. They're just... A proximity alert screamed through the bridge. On the view screen, hundreds of small objects streaked toward the Vorak ships. Human drones, no larger than fighters, moving in erratic patterns. Point defense, engage. Tharx barked. The Vorak gunners opened fire, their plasma turrets swiveling with mechanical precision. Dozens of drones exploded in flashes of white light. But for every one destroyed, 3 more took its place. On the bridge of the USN Defiance, Admiral Hayes watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. They're taking the bait. Captain Blake leaned forward. Their point defense is overheating. Another 30 seconds and they'll be blind. Hayes nodded. Execute Phase 2. Across the human fleet, launch bays hissed open. A second wave of drones deployed. These ones, bulkier, slower. The Vorak gunners, already overwhelmed, didn't notice the difference until it was too late. Sensor Officer Vriss on the Imperator suddenly stiffened. Battle Lord. The new contacts. They're not drones. They're the first of the modified warheads detonated, not with an explosion, but with an electromagnetic pulse. Vorak ships shuddered as their shields flickered and died. Systems rebooted in panicked sequences. Tharx roared as half his screens went dark. What in the void was that? Vriss's claws scrambled over the controls. Human MP warheads, they've disabled our... A third wave hit. These drones didn't explode at all. They latched onto Vorak hulls like parasites, drilling through armor with plasma cutters. Inside the Atlantica, Commander Morrison watched the carnage unfold. That is their point. Defense down. Now we hit them where it hurts. The human fleet, silent until now, opened fire. Railgun rounds punched through Vorak armor. Missiles streaked into exposed engine arrays. The Vorak, so confident in their brute strength, had no answer for the precision strikes. Fleetmaster Gora's hologram flickered to life on Hayes' screen. His mandibles quivered with rage. You dishonorable vermin. This is not how true warriors fight. Hayes smirked. War isn't about honor, it is about winning. She tapped a command. Every human ship simultaneously pivoted and accelerated away. Gore blinked. They're retreating. Tharx snarled. Cowards after them. The Vorak fleet surged forward, engines flaring. They didn't notice the asteroid field ahead until it was too late. Morrison glanced at his navigator. They following. Like moths to a flame, sir. Good, detonate the charges. The asteroids weren't natural. Human engineers had spent weeks planting fusion warheads inside them. The detonation lit up space like a supernova. Vorak ships at the front vaporized instantly. Others spun out of control, their hulls breached by shrapnel, traveling at relativistic speeds. Gora's flagship barely avoided the blast, but his escorts weren't so lucky, his comms filled with panicked shouts. Fleetmaster, the Dreadclaw is gone. Engine failure on the Harbinger. We're... Mayday May. Hayes watched the chaos unfold. Now we finish it. The human fleet, untouched by the explosion, swung back around. Their weapons charged. Gore realized the trap too late. He had followed them into a kill box. Morrison's voice crackled over the fleet-wide channel. All ships, fire at will. The final volley tore the Vorak armada apart. Tharks's Imperator, crippled and drifting, took 3 railgun rounds straight to its bridge. The last thing the Battlelord saw was the Atlantica's prow turning toward him, its guns glowing red. Morrison's face appeared on his shattered view screen. You called us weak, but weakness isn't about strength, it's about adaptability. Then the world went white. On the Defiance, Blake let out a slow breath. That is 3 Vorak battle groups down. Think the Council will get the message. Hayes folded her arms. If they don't, we'll send another. The remaining Vorak ships, those that could still move, were already fleeing. The humans let them go. The message had been sent. The Imperator's bridge shuddered as another explosion rocked its starboard side. Battlelord Tharks gripped the command throne, his armored claws digging into the reinforced metal. The holographic display flickered, showing the wreckage of his fleet scattered across Sigma Draconis. Where are they? Tharks snarled. His sensor officer Vriss tapped frantically at the console. I don't know, my lord. Their signatures keep vanishing. A Vorak dreadnought erupted on the display, its hull splitting apart as railgun rounds punched through its core. Thark's mandibles twitched. This wasn't battle. This was butchery. Then, like a ghost, the USN Atlantica materialized less than 5 kilometers off their bow. Direct hit on their engines? Morrison's tactical officer called out. Jake Morrison leaned forward in his chair, eyes locked on the crippled Imperator. Open a channel. The Vorak bridge shuddered again as the comms crackled to life. Thark's face filled the screen, his chitinous plates cracked from the battle's strain. You called us weak, Morrison said, voice calm. But weakness isn't about strength, it's about adaptability. Tharks hissed. You hide like cowards strike from shadows. This is not honor. Morrison smirked. Honor won't save you from a railgun. He nodded to his weapons officer. The Atlantica's main batteries hummed to life, their barrels glowing cherry. Red on the Imperator, alarms blared. Shields at Faye, Vriss shouted. We cannot take another volley, Tharks roared, slamming a fist into his console. All batteries fire, take them with us. The Vorak guns unleashed a final desperate barrage. Plasma bolts streaked toward the Atlantica, only to detonate harmlessly against its reinforced prow armor. Morrison didn't flinch. Finish it. The Atlantica's railguns fired, 3 tungsten rounds, each the size of a ground car, punched through the Imperator's hull. The first obliterated the bridge, the second tore through engineering, the third struck the antimatter containment core. For a fraction of a second, the Imperator glowed white hot, then it vanished in a sun. Bright blast. Morrison exhaled. Around him, the crew erupted into cheers. All Vorak capital ships confirmed destroyed, Tactical reported. Remaining escorts are retreating. Morrison tapped his comm. Admiral Hayes, the Imperator is down. The field is ours. Hayes' voice crackled back. Good work, Commander. Now let's make sure the galaxy never forgets this day. On the USN Defiance, Captain Blake watched the last of the Vorak ships vanish into warp. The battle was over. The wager was won. But the real fight was just beginning. High above Sigma Draconis, the human fleet regrouped. Their hulls were scarred, their crews exhausted, but not a single ship had been lost. Blake turned to his comm officer. Send the full battle logs to the Galactic Council, encrypted. Priority 1. He glanced at the view screen, where the wreckage of the Vorak Armada drifted silently. Let's see them call us weak now. The council chamber of Zenthus Prime had never known silence like this. The floating platforms, usually buzzing with the murmurs of 30 species, stood utterly still. High Prelate Vexus's bioluminescent patterns flickered erratically, her 4 eyes locked on the holographic replay playing at the chamber's center. Captain Ryan Blake stood at the base of the central dais, his hands clasped behind his back. The Battle of Sigma Draconis looped in perfect clarity, human ships dancing through the Vorak formations like ghosts, railgun rounds punching through armor thought impenetrable. The final detonation of the asteroid field that had shattered 3 battle groups in one stroke. Ambassador Krell's carapace plates rattled as he shifted uncomfortably. The Vorak's massive frame seemed smaller now, his earlier bravado replaced by something no Vorak had ever shown in this chamber before: doubt. "You cheated," Krell growled, his voice modulator crackling with static. Blake didn't turn. "You declared no rules, Ambassador, only that we fight." A murmur rippled through the assembled delegates. The Corellians' floating orbs pulsed in agitation. The Vespidians' exoskeletons darkened with unease. Even the normally unflappable Octavians had retracted 3 of their tentacles in shock. High Prelate Vexis raised a slender limb, and the chamber fell silent again. "The footage has been verified by 17 independent analysts," she said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. "No prohibited technologies were employed, no external interference detected." Krell's claws scraped against his platform. "Their ships shouldn't have survived those maneuvers, the G-forces alone." "We're within tolerances," interrupted a new voice. Admiral Lisa Hayes stepped forward, her uniform crisp, despite the battle she'd just commanded. "Human physiology adapts. Our inertial dampeners compensate. You assumed brute strength was the only metric that mattered." The hologram shifted, zooming in on the final moments. The USN Atlantica emerging from stealth, Commander Morrison's railguns already glowing white, hot as they locked onto the Imperator's crippled hull. The audio feed crackled to life. "You called us weak," Morrison's voice echoed through the chamber. "But weakness isn't about strength. It is about adaptability." The railguns fired. The Imperator's core detonated in a silent bloom of light. Krell looked away. Vexis descended from her platform, her bioluminescence shifting to the deep blue of formal proclamation. "By the laws of the Great Trials," she announced, "and before the witness of the Galactic Federation, the outcome is incontestable." She paused, her gaze sweeping the chamber. "Humanity has prevailed against insurmountable odds, employing tactics and technologies previously deemed impossible." Blake allowed himself a small smile. Vexis straightened. "Therefore, by unanimous recognition of this council, the species designation Homo sapiens is hereby elevated to the rank of apex species with all attendant rights and privileges." The chamber erupted. The Vespidians' exoskeletons flashed alarm patterns. The Octavians' tentacles lashed in agitation. Only the Corellians remained still, their telepathic orbs swirling with what might have been respect. Krell slammed a fist against his platform. "This is absurd. They're primates, barely spacefaring for 3 centuries. Admiral Hayes turned slowly. "And yet," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos, "your dreadnoughts are burning in the Sigma Draconis debris field, while ours are already en route home." Silence again. Vexis approached Blake, her bioluminescence now pulsing a soft gold, the Zephyrian sign of deference. "Your species has rewritten the axioms of warfare, Captain. The Council will require time to adjust." Blake nodded. "Take all the time you need, High Prelate. Just remember one thing." He glanced at Krell, then back to Vexis, his smile widening. "We warned you we'd surprise you." Outside the chamber, the starfield of Zenthis Prime glittered, unchanged, yet somehow different. The Vorak armadas still patrolled the border systems. The Zephyrian dynasties still wielded their ancient influence. But now, among them, moved a new power. One that had just proven it could outthink, outfight, and outmaneuver every superior species in the galaxy. And as the USN Defiance powered up its warp drive for the journey back to Sol, its crew didn't cheer. They didn't gloat. They simply worked. Efficient as always, preparing for the next challenge. Because humanity had never needed the galaxy's approval to know what they were. The real work was just beginning.